going on, everyone? And welcome to another
Hey.
episode of Carbonate Bounty BS with me and the nerds. How's everybody doing this week?
Good.
Good.
Yeah.
Great,
Good evening,
man.
World Wide Web.
Definitely, yep. A good, a great evening. As we see, Ken has another nickname with another. This will be another episode of Conspiracy Theories. We'll call it. Yeah. hopefully, we'll get one of those on tonight's episode. But before
Watch
we
your
even
back,
dive
kid.
in, definitely before we dive into our season 2, episode 5 review of Entombed, let's let DP let you guys know where to find us.
Nerdcyclopedia.com. People, make sure that you are going on your favorite website and getting your favorite social media platforms through us and at us, and on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and also on TikTok. If you are listening to us on podcasts, we are on iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, anywhere that you listen to your favorite podcast. We are there. If you are watching us on YouTube, thank you. And also if you're watching us on Facebook, thank you. Make sure that you hit that subscribe button and also that notification button. So anytime that we're on, you know that we're on. While you're on Facebook, make sure that you join us at the Carbonate Bounty BS, a Star Wars group. You see all your favorite memes, your favorite conversation, as far as Star Wars, everything is concerned. Also, leave us some feedback. Nerds at nerdcyclopedia.com. We love getting your feedback and telling us what you think.
It's definitely a big part of the episode is everybody else's feedback outside of ours. I'm sure a lot of you get sick of hearing us weekly, so it's nice for you guys to be able to carry on our discussions on your own with your own family or friends, or even as he said, on the Facebook chat. So definitely keep firing that up and keep the discussion going. But kind of starting this off, we'll lead this one off with Hitch. I mean, he gave us kind of an interesting talk point kind of leading into this episode as far as overall feeling, maybe just kind of maybe leading into season 2, kind of almost our, not really halfway point, but maybe a first third. So we'll call it the first act of this. We'll let Hitch lead into this and maybe hear some of his thoughts as we kind of lead to, we'll say act 1 of 3 of this Bad Batch kind of series.
Yeah, so I think, this episode, they were kind of losing my attention last week. And I think some of it has to do with how good the third episode was. That the tale of Crosshair and Commander Cody had a really, like, it was pastiche of Blade Runner and a lot of other stuff, and it was very interesting to me. And then last week felt very let's go on adventure-y. And I know this is a cartoon where we're going on adventures, and I think that's really cool. But in comparison to how serious and like artistic and really, I mean, just gorgeous that episode was, episode 3. I just thought it left a lot to be desired. And then this episode sort of started out, Wanda Sykes taking us on another, is she full of shit or not? Like, I don't, you know what I mean? That was kind of interesting. But and then Ken, you really pointed this out. We were talking offline, and you really put your hit the nail on the head. It was very much like Raiders of the Lost Ark, even with a boulder, right? You got a boulder.
Yep.
And then this episode got my attention back. Basically taking a left turn and being a Rick and Morty episode all of a sudden, where they pull the thing and you're like, oh, I wonder what death trap they've triggered. But no, the entire mountain explodes and this like humongous mech monster giraffe just starts going insane and destroying the countryside for no reason that we can decide. You have no idea why this is happening. And that was one. Hilarious. This is like one of the funniest cartoons for Star Wars that they've made. And 2, it was unexpected, and it made me very interested in what was going on. I will also say the resolution of having this thing just die. Like, they killed this thing. Like, they went in on this treasure dive and ended up killing this thing. That was the only living thing on the planet, right? Who knows why it was there? Who knows who put it there? It's been there for thousands of years. You know what I'm saying? And now it's dead, and they just leave. And I love that the ending where there's like the destroyed mechs in the background and they're just flying off the planet and the music's all triumphant. Like, yeah, well, we did it. And then just cuts to Dave Filoni.
our Lord and Savior, Dave Filoni.
Do you know what I watched after this episode?
What'd you watch after this episode?
Andor.
Yeah.
It was suggested.
That's the algorithm for you.
Good soldiers follow orders. Ken.
Yeah. Absolutely. So Raiders of the Lost Ark, also a a birth child of our father, George Lucas. And this episode basically covered that to a T. I think they were looking for something that built the teamwork aspect of Bad Batch, but then how do they react when they're split up? Because that was the other thing, because they weren't all together for most of this episode. They were split up. There was this, this incident that, this avalanche that split them up. So it was nice to see how the different groups could combine and become a team that would, solve the problem. Again, I hear you guys saying like last week's episode was kind of like soft, and this week's episode isn't quite as triumphant as we'd all like to see from this genre of Star Wars. But I feel like this is what it is. This is what this group is. They have missions. They're trying to earn money. They're trying to get themselves back into some sort of respect. I mean, they're out of it. I mean, these clones, they are out of the system completely. So they're just trying to get themselves back. What is her name? What's her name? What's her leader's name? That Twi'lek, Bryn.
Mm-hmm.
She's harnessing them in. She's giving them jobs. She's telling them, "Hey, we're going to go find this artifact. It was, from 2,000 years ago, and this one's from 3,000 years ago." And these important things that she's trying to get. Obviously, she wants the money. She wants the artifact. She wants the fame. She wants the money. But she's bringing these guys along, and she sees that the only way she's getting these things is with these dudes, right? And Omega, who is slaying through this whole thing. Like, she's several steps ahead of Bad Batch, and that makes sense because she's the original clone. She's the
puzzle master. She's the puzzle master.
Yeah.
She's the puzzle master. She's the Rubik's Cube of clones. So, I mean, she's slaying through this whole thing. I love the mech beast at the end. I mean, that was so Godzilla. I mean, so anime. I mean, the thing was like crushing it, destroying the planet. We don't even know why. And I still
Just
think
hates
we
that
don't
planet
know
so
why.
much.
Love that. But
Smash.
I mean, I thought this was a great, it was a good, okay, I'm take it back. It's not great. It's a good episode. And I love how we keep having, droids that look like trash cans.
Yeah.
Because that was always a thing. Like the droid was like looked like a trash can. R2D2, trash can. Here's Mel, and that's my name, Melkin. Being a trash can, but being a team player and coming in when it counted. So it had Star Wars written all over it.
Yeah, you want to go ahead, DP?
Yeah, it was a good episode. Okay. So I mean, do we call that like Chekhov's mech beast? I mean, I was hoping to come on here and be like, okay, guys, what was that I seen? I mean, is that something I need to be aware of? Is that something that was in the lore that's just now being reintroduced and everything? So it sounds like, it was news to you guys just as much as me, with that thing. It was a cool thing to see, and it did wake me up, from a typical, okay, this is just like a Raiders of the Lost Ark episode, them finding a tomb and all that stuff. And all of a sudden it changes and wakes up into this big old thing. I'm like, okay, we got something going on here. Then the episode ends, just like that. It just does what it does. And then they kill my man, the droid. I'm like, oh, how did they let the mech beast kill the droid? I wanted, it was a sad thing. But yeah, overall, it was a good way to see our characters split up and come back together. And didn't really have a lot of character development. Didn't really move the plot. And I want to go back to something that you were saying, Ken. I think with Clone Wars, we seen like an overall arch of where it was going. Whereas this, we're not really seeing where it's going. It's happening at a particular time period. But there's it doesn't appear to me as of yet, there's an overall arc to the season. You know, it just seems like it's a bunch of A-team type stories. You know, they get in and get out, you know, do their jobs. And I can appreciate that to a degree, but I just say this thing, I'm particularly favored in a more of a serialized
Yeah, it's more structured, more
yeah,
rigid. Yeah.
yeah. So but overall, I always love Bad Batch. I mean, I'm always excited to see him every week, so I can't be disappointed. Even with last week and everything, it was good.
And what's missing? Crosshair.
Yes. So okay. So if you want to call some something's going to be happening with that. So we're getting like the plants and character stuff with our team, our heroes. Then we get Crosshair, every now and then, see what he's doing. He seems to be the more interesting person,
And why is that? Why is he more interesting?
Because
I think it's because his story is in flux. Everything's changing around him. Plus, we're learning all this information about what the Empire actually did after Order 66 that we weren't privy to.
Yes.
And meanwhile, while Bad Batch they're doing fun things and they're entertaining, right? And they're trying to make money. And maybe the thing they're trying to learn is like, they can't really be mercenaries because they just don't care about money. Like Hunter seems really annoyed by most of this stuff, right? He seems just genuinely like, I don't remember. Do this.
Yeah, Hunter's big thing at the end of the Order 66 in the last season was like he said at the beginning of this season. They just want him. He wants them to make enough money for them to disappear. Mm-hmm. And I think the other members of Bad Batch are letting him know, like, Hunter, we're marked. We can't just disappear. I mean, Andor has proved that no matter what, when you're marked by the Empire, you can't just disappear. So I think that's what we'll probably see later on towards that. Hunter will come to the realization that they just can't disappear, like they are marked, right? So it's one of those things that they're always going to have to do something or always be, part of the rebellion, always fight.
They need Crosshair back. He's an integral piece to that whole to the team, and somehow I still feel like he's gonna come back because. The 2 episodes where Crosshair was sort of in conflict with the Empire, he doesn't see any loyalty with them. I mean, they're giving him jobs just like Bad Batch is doing these jobs. I mean, I see Crosshair, he's just taking these menial jobs just to get by until he can make an adjustment in his brain. I could be completely wrong, but I want him to get back with Wrecker and Hunter and Tech. I do. I really do. I want to see these guys back together because they were family.
I agree with you in saying that conflict is the next thing that's going to move the plot forward. Yeah. And until that happens, we could see 100 of these episodes where they just go and do something and it's interesting and they use their skills in a way. And if this were a video game, that's what I would expect, right? Like 10 missions of that and then one mission where it's like, wow, Crosshair's there and he's shooting at me and I got to die or whatever. You know what I mean? That's what I would expect. So I think the pacing is interesting in that they're sort of lulling us into this thing of the week. This is the story of the week. And hopefully it's to set up a punch. I'm dying to know what happens to all these clones. I mean, there's hundreds of millions of clones you got to figure just chilling. And, during...
Well, I mean, not to interrupt you, buddy, but
sure.
We got 5 episodes and we only got 1 episode of Crosshair so far.
Yeah. And so all that story was, and if you think about how maybe they could have paced this differently, is putting that into different pieces while this is going on, right? It almost feels like if they had deposited each act of that Crosshair story, maybe in each episode, the pacing would be a little different and we'd feel, more like that was involved. But putting it together is its own decision. And I think that they were probably correct just based on how each episode has felt like its own pastiche of a different science fiction movie, right?
Yeah.
I said Blade Runner for episode 3. Episode 4 actually is just Phantom Menace. We don't have to look that hard. It was a Phantom Menace pastiche. This one, Raiders of the Lost Ark, right? So Indiana Jones, I was getting big Temple of Doom vibes with all that stuff too. So I agree. I think that's a very interesting way to kind of organize the season. What I was saying about the millions of clones is that it's a very dangerous thing to have millions and millions of soldiers with nothing to do. That's a recipe for problems, and it was a problem all throughout history for the Roman Empire and in some of those Eastern like
Axis
Chinese
countries
dynasties
like Germany and Russia and
where they
those
would have
guys
problems.
they weren't happy just peeling potatoes, were they?
No.
No.
There are mutinies everywhere, and even in 1917, the French army mutiny during World War One. So that stuff happens, and if there's not, like, what are you going to do with these guys? Like, they're trained killers. They're really, really good at what they do, which is killing robots. But all the robots are dead.
Right.
So
yeah, it's one of those things. I mean, it kind of leads to like that straight. We'll call it, as ZP like to say, we'll call it Chekhov's remote, right? We're looking for that master remote that essentially kills them all, right? That hits the switch on that chip and fries all their heads. We've seen that in Rebels, right? Or Bad Batch Season 1. That there is a way to override them all. I mean, I guess could fry that kind of chip that they're all tied, behind or kind of linked by. But yeah, it's interesting. I mean, as you said, the only meat we have to this is really we're looking for Crosshair, and what's going on with him. And then the other story we have would be, I guess, the mystery of Sid, as he said in the end of last week's, and how she double crosses people. So that's really the only other meat to what's going to happen with Sid. Where are they going to fall out with her? Is she going to do something to screw them over and lose their trust? So, yeah, that's really the only, I guess, plot armor we kind of have.
If this were Grand Theft Auto, and they introduced us to that guy last week and Wanda Sykes, like in two consecutive missions, I'd assume that something bad is going to happen to Sid, and I'm going to end up just getting missions from these guys, and they're going to be like, "You got to get rid of Sid, sorry," and
So something may already have happened. Maybe I mean, because we don't know. The last we saw was Sid was. She had some, an option or a job. There's something else she was working on, and now all of a sudden we're somewhere else. Right. So something happened. So that's interesting. There's a hole between episode 4 and 5.
Yeah, and DP, I know you write a lot, and you obviously work on your comic book. And hits it. We lose this every weekend. I really like how they kind of Easter egg and drip feed so much stuff from episodes. Obviously with Indy coming out, we get the Raiders, so we'll get the Indy references from Filoni, which I don't find this stuff like ironic by any point, or like this is put for a reason, right? These Easter eggs are put to sell something. We find the payoff, we find the compass. It's really a wayfinder from the last trilogy, right? So we're getting these devices to kind of retcon, yeah, right. Just a typical blacklight, right, and a wayfinder that's now a compass. So I do appreciate what Filoni does by trying to make plot devices important. Because once again, we discussed it, the last trilogy, there was so much stuff. There was so much context that if they spent the time to really pay off, these devices, all these checkoffs, whatever it is, I think we would have took more time and more liking into them. Because literally, we call it a dumpster fire because there was just literally so much going on and so many things introduced that there was no backstory to it. So I think what you see Filoni doing in all of these shows, whether it be Bad Batch, whether it be Andor, Mandalorian, is we see a lot of devices from the stuff of the past now being paid off on top of the new stuff he's introducing. So I can really appreciate the work he's doing. He's doing two jobs right now. He's fixing things from the past, and he's introducing things to the future. And he's just making it all make sense at the same time.
He's backing it up. He's backing it up with evidence.
The luxury Filoni has that Lucas didn't have, in which I don't know if he had an option or not, or he didn't want to, was that the prequel stuff had to be movies. It couldn't be like a series, because at that point in time, people wouldn't accept like a Star Wars series, for like the coming back of Star Wars and everything. So he introduced a whole bunch of stuff that should have been in a more expanded form in a serial, TV show type of format. Filoni has the benefit of being able to expand the stories in episodic, natures and nature and stuff. So he's able to stretch stuff, give a whole bunch of character development. You call it course correcting and everything, but I mean, if he was probably handed a movie, a 2 hour, 2.5 hour, script or whatever, or wrote a 2 hours, it would probably end up the same type of jumbled mess and everything like George tried to introduces some core concepts that made that pique people's interest, but at the same time it really couldn't go anywhere because you only had so much time to tell the story, and it was some great stuff in the prequel stuff that was introduced. It was other than like Jar Jar and everything, it's his favorite character.
Now wait a minute. Now wait. I think I heard somewhere there's a rumor that they're going to do a Jar Jar Binks channel. It could be an actual.
I heard it was a musical, Ken.
It could be. It could be a musical. They're just getting the parts together. They haven't gotten anyone to actually play Jar Jar yet. But they got a couple people in mind.
Long enough.
I got a nerd cord for you. Let's do Jar Jar versus Omega because I can't stand either of their voices. So
and it could be the same. Maybe Omega is Jar Jar.
No.
I just
like the character. I think you're right. It's too high pitched. I wish they dropped.
I can't. I don't understand. Like she's a clone, a perfect version of all of them, but she's not even English. She's Australian. So like.
I have to have subtitles on to watch episodes where she's in because I don't know what the hell.
Yeah, because she has like an Australian, but it's almost like she has like a little bit of an impediment. So some of the words that come off are like I don't really fully get.
Like she's got a space between her teeth or something. Like there's air. Like something's going on. Like I can't understand what she's saying.
So is she staying like the same age, or is she actually growing? Like she is.
That's one thing they haven't they talked about, and I wish we alluded to that. Like maybe we see it in that maybe Mandalorian trailer about Kamino, but they don't go into like as far as like does she de-age, does she age slower, because she is like a perfect version, I guess, of the clones, or a version that has free will, right? So we don't know.
She should be like 45 years old or something like that.
She should be a lot older than.
Who else is going to know all the crap about Grogu, though? I mean, it would make a lot of sense for her to show up in Mandalorian season 3 to be like, I was on Kamino and I can tell you all about the cloning program. What do you want to know about it? Oh, you want to know whether he's a clone? I can answer that question. By the way, I've been on a cartoon show you've maybe heard about with my guys, the Bad Batch. Bring them on out here. Get out here, guys. Come on.
Right. But hey, Steel City, we wouldn't understand what you just said. It would be completely innocuous. We'd be like, what did she say? Huh?
She's saying, come on out here. No one comes out. It's like, oh yeah, they've been dead for a while.
So you're saying like we should flip like a Mandalorian episode and make it like they did with the end of She-Hulk and make it like a Ricky Lake episode? And they all come out and they introduce it. Ricky Lake.
Yes. And use Ricky Lake too. Like
she would have to be a droid. She would have to be a droid. So
it could be like a Mori episode. Abandoned at the Jedi Temple. This child was left by no one by the Jedi Order.
But nah, I mean
he's out of control. He's out of control. Look at him drinking bone broth, eating eggs. He's a trouble child. He's been rolling around the galaxy with this character here, dressed all in tinfoil.
There it is. Missing. That's what we need more of, Steel City. Applause.
That's funny. But yeah, I mean, if that did happen in Mando, I mean, that would make my day. That would make me way more interested in Omega than I am now.
Now that is some product synergy.
That is entertainment. So you're interested in Omega?
I mean, you got this character is the character is interesting. Two, there's a possibility for Omega to be the living link between, like, with the information about what was actually going on between the prequels and the world beyond the original trilogy, which is important because there's not an informational link. So if you want people in the Mandalorian time frame to know about things that happened in the prequel time frame, so to link those Clone War era events to the Mandalorian, you need somebody that's going to remember them all. And Omega actually is situated because of her, encyclopedic knowledge of the clone program, which she demonstrated in season 1. She's the person that would know all that crap. So why would Disney not want to sell more Omega stuff? I agree completely, but they gotta move it up. They gotta move
move the story along a little bit more. I need more information. I want to see her develop more. I want to see more connection between the timeline, where we are now and where we're going.
Well,
They,
yeah, and
they got to sell it to me.
Hitch makes a real good point, but then the problem becomes is if you make her a real life actor, so you would have to find somebody in the right age frame, right, to do a real life story because he's right. We would want to see like the link because outside of her, the only link we would have would be R2D2 or C3PO that are right now at this time frame detached from Anakin or anyone, right? So they're just droids that are found and then reunited, right, by the rebels.
Well, the
So
rebels, yeah,
yeah, so
oh,
right now they're really the only almanac outside of Omega that we have of the events over this period of time. So it would be nice to get her recollection, maybe even like a because they do that with Boba, right? Just an episode of
Yeah.
her. They don't even have to give her a whole show, right? Just maybe peel off a half of a Mandalorian episode if he meets up with her, and then we go to her kind of backstory, and she kind of maybe fills in the blank.
Here's my pitch. You ready? Book of Boba Fett, season 2, episode 1. She shows up, Green Power Ranger. By the end of the episode, White Power Ranger.
Well, that's what the droid was. That's what it was, right? That's definitely what the giant. That's what the vibes were when I saw that giant thing raise up. I'm like, oh my god, it's the green Zord. It's the green dragon Zord.
That Rita, right? Whatever.
Rita Repulsa.
Make my monster grow.
that was Mecha Godzilla. That was that. Yeah, that's what I saw with the proton fire, from the mouth and just carving a straight line in the earth. I mean, it was very primitive destruction. I mean, there wasn't really anything there that was like catastrophic. It was just, it was shooting a death ray that went in a lateral line, and that was it. It was very boring.
I don't think that was something from the Empire that they left behind, or
Well, yeah, it was weird because they said it was dated way before then, which I mean,
way before, right?
We don't really know though, right? I mean, other than it wasn't even a temple, right? So they literally got in some type of alien type foreign, technology that was.
So like, do you guys know there's some like nuclear waste material that's going to be harmful for like 50,000 years, right? And there's been all these discussions about how to make a site that's storage for that stuff so self-evidently like stay away from here forever psychologically to humans that you don't have to rely on actual language because that's how long of a time span 50,000 years is on the planet, where people wouldn't recognize a sign you just would write that says get the hell away from here, it's radioactive waste. So it's bizarre to me that what is the purpose of this thing, because obviously it's not some dangerous thing that they hid, or else they would have hidden it and there would be no way to get in there, right? So what is the purpose of this mecha horse that you have like their energy in a bottle and then you pull the cap off but the energy comes back? I just didn't understand the mechanism. But then again,
it was protecting something, wasn't it? I mean, it was protecting that tomb that they were getting the artifact from. So
it wasn't
if you steal my ruby, I'll burn the whole planet down. Yeah. That's just so crazy.
Sure. I mean, and the brain, it was the heart, right? It was the heart. I
thought that was basically like the key, like to basically start the thing up. It was like
how much of that story do you think was real? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know that it seemed like some of that was being made up as they were going along just to keep Hunter basically moving forward, and then Fee was just like, we'll figure it out later.
Yeah, I can understand that. I mean, it was kind of fun.
I wanted this. I didn't get this from. I really thought we were going to get one of these things from Raiders. Where he measures out the sand and puts it down, and it doesn't work. And I felt a little bit cheated that didn't happen, but that's okay.
Another interesting point toward that episode as well is the Jedi reference, right? I wasn't expecting that, that they understand about Jedi lore, ancient Jedi, ancient Sith. I mean, that was really interesting. I mean, with these being clones, it just shows how intelligent, right, they really are. So I appreciated that kind of, they didn't know if it was a Jedi temple artifact kind of. So it just lets you know, I guess, outside of the Jedi themselves, how much people understand the lure of the Jedi and the Sith, and how, I guess, part of the universe they are. Because when we think about it, we think it's really a lot more of a closed circle, closed society type when you hear Jedi. And most people outside of them really think of them as a myth, right? Space wizards. A lot of people don't believe what they really are until they come on and actually see one face to face. So I could appreciate that part that they kind of went into like understanding the history of them and the mystique of Jedi.
They don't really know or understand them, but yet they have like a whole council and government and everything that really okay.
Yeah.
It's like they're the elite. You know how like if you look at histories, they're always slanted toward giving you information about rich and powerful people because that's who can afford to promulgate a history of themselves. Star Wars is, my take has been that that's kind of the Star Wars we've been getting up to now, is that sort of take, and it's less, it's more like a palace intrigue more than it is like struggles between groups of people, or like a civil war or something like that. It's always felt more top heavy, like it's just the very, very top echelon, like how in like Shakespearean plays, for some reason there's always a duke and a doge or whatever involved for some reason. Like you just got to have those guys. But now we have ground level soldiers, right? These are special forces guys, but their operative rank in our society isn't anything more than like SEAL Team 6. So they're, bosun chiefs or whatever, like really high paid NCOs, essentially really high specialized NCOs. So they're not, in that elite class, they're working people the same way I think the characters in Andor are. So it's interesting to see Star Wars by not using the Jedi in these more earthy depictions of their universe. They're really setting up what makes you like, this is the currency of elite, is having force powers in the Star Wars universe.
That's an interesting point, because Star Wars, the characters we know are the ones that are fighting the fight. Like they are out there, they're in the spotlight, they're in the tabloids, they're in the news. Luke, Leia, Han, they're up there with everybody knows their name. But then there's this whole hundreds of thousands of undercurrent soldiers and story manipulators that are there, that are actually carrying the whole thing along. But when we initially got Star Wars, it was really just these 5 characters, the human characters. We had a droid, we had a Wookiee, and we had Darth Vader. I mean, that was basically it. But there was this other vast number of people that were like us, like doing the work,
right?
Like moving this thing along. And now we're getting all of that story, and Disney is letting us see, and Filoni is letting us see, that one simple person, one simple character can move a story in whatever way they want. I mean, and these cartoons are so, like the Clone Wars, it was like initially I hated them, but now I love them.
I almost didn't want to do them. Like after the first one, I was almost like, can these guys do these without me?
Now I'm totally vested in anything animated with Star Wars, because they're giving me these nice little historical nuggets that draw things together, and they can do things in a very quick fashion too. It doesn't take years to do these things. It takes months to do these animated stories, and they're chock full of information. I mean, there's so much stuff.
It's like if you were really hungry, if you were a super Star Wars fan and everything, sort of hesitant on the animated stuff, this sort of like quench it. It's sort of like, I guess, a snack between dinners, the movies are like,
Sure.
The main courses and everything, but you get like the snacks and, some good snacks and everything with like the animated stuff, and maybe like the, or maybe I should say the TV shows are a bit of more of a lunch thing, and then whenever the movie come back out, you get your main course and stuff, and hopefully it's not like Rise of Skywalker,
But I don't even see a difference between the cartoons and the live action stuff anymore.
It's not supposed to be. I'm looking at this whole thing as what T. Mitch likes to say, as a casual, as a person coming into like the universe. It's all one thing to me. Yeah. I don't see any difference, because they tell the story cohesively so much to where, okay, there's not too many inconsistencies there with this medium, from the animated stuff to like the live action, movie stuff, to like the TV show stuff, to like the comic stuff and everything. It's all one thing. It's all one story to me. Unlike with Marvel stuff, you get like reboots and stuff, and convoluted stuff that they have to redo like every few years and stuff. And their comics is not related to like the movie stuff. All that stuff is separate. This here is all one thing, which I'm down for.
Yeah, it doesn't matter whether it's animated, a cartoon, whether it's CG and cartoon together, or live action or special edition. It's all
part of one story.
One story. That's right.
I mean, that's kind of like, and we've alluded to this, right? Everybody wants to give Disney crap, right? But I mean, this has been like a masterstroke by them, right? Because they took the property of Marvel and they made it. They put Kevin Feige the head of it, right? Because when it started, it was rough. We had to redo Hulk, and there was a lot of stuff. And what they did is they made a singular, right? They've had a couple hiccups. I mean, Phase 4 we won't get into yet, but for the most part, it's been a singular kind of arc, right? That they've had different sagas into it, but there's been a singular arc, and there's really been Feige, really one main voice driving the story. What Disney has done with Star Wars is the same. They've taken on Filoni and Favreau, right? And they've made one singular person tell us multiple arcs of stories, but there's still that one singular head that's driving the story. So as we talked about it, whatever medium you're watching on, it feels the same, right?
Yeah.
There's so many shows that you watch, as you talk about, that the cartoons aren't like it. I mean, personally, I think the DC animated stuff is 20 times better than any of the movies they release.
Yep.
And that's not even close, right?
Yep.
So,
yeah.
I mean, that's something I don't understand, how Warner Brothers has a property so strong that they don't release more of their cartoon stuff, because it's way better than any theatrical release they've ever done.
Animated, and they don't respect the animated stuff.
Bro,
they put effort into like the live action, but otherwise Disney, they respect the whole thing, and Kathleen Kennedy, to her credit and everything, she began like the Star Wars, the Lucasfilm story group, that sort of put everything in a cohesive type thing. So whenever they brought creators on, okay, you could tell a section of the story. This is how you can, this is the playground that this is a sandbox you could play with it how you want, but this is stuff that you can't touch, or can't change or whatever. So gives you a good wiggle room, like with Andor and everything. The Gilroy boys, they play within a section of the sandbox and everything, and still created something way different. It shows you like just a whole creativity that you can come to in this thing, and have it not take away from what you like and love.
Mm-hmm. And Kathleen Kennedy has been there all along. I mean, she was involved in Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah,
Temple of Doom. She was an executive producer. She knows these stories, the characters, and the importance of having the audience engaged, and what do you need to do to keep the audience engaged. And she's kept that all along. I mean, this whole project from the beginning, when Disney bought Star Wars, the franchise, it was a slam dunk. I don't think they've had a dog yet. I mean, there hasn't been anything.
It was a big controversy letting go the extended universe, the EU stuff.
Oh my! Don't do that not on this group. No. We don't talk about.
We don't talk about Bruno.
We don't talk about the Legend series and the Yuzun Vong and Ben Skywalker and Jason Solo. And
that could all go away. I mean, what they've got right now is a great, connection and storyline, and I mean, they're doing a slam dunk job with the whole thing.
I think we've posed this question before. Maybe a year ago, maybe longer, but I think that what Ken is maybe hitting on here is that what they're doing at Disney is starting to, I think, eclipse what they had done with Legends. I think it's starting to get to a point where what they're doing now has reached a level of maturity where, they have enough stories running in enough timelines at the same time that it's starting to become more intricate than Legends. And I think filling in the gap here between episodes 3 and 4 and fleshing out what happens after Return of the Jedi are going to go a long way. And I think a lot of this has to do with, it's probably just disappointment that the sequel trilogy wasn't more coherent and cohesive, because that's the thing that, you know, if you were a fan of those books, they all fit together one on top of the other to the point where you'd read it and they'd recap stuff that was in another book, but you'd read that book, so you just would flip through. You don't need to see it again. So you remember, because it was 600 pages. Like you don't need any more pages on that one story. Like if you'll remember, like it's almost like if you'll remember back in this age, Luke had a blah blah blah. You're like, who cares about that? I remember that. And that was when he was, you know, when he turned it. I remember that whole thing. So I think we're finally getting to the point where the volume of storytelling has reached a critical mass, and it's like when you're trying to get a kite up in the air and you're running, you got to run for a while until it can hold itself up. And then once you get above a certain point and there's wind, it stays up there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they do need to figure out what's happening after Rise of Skywalker. So we
in 30 years they have to figure that out. They can go for 30 years making things in real time before that comes up, and I think
fixing the holes along the way.
So look, how long does the fandom? I okay. Now that you're saying okay, I agree. You have a lot of time. There's still a lot of stories to tell and everything, so you can placate the fans for like a minute. But how
even
long?
If you say like 15 years until Ben flips, right? You know, you've got a decade here where you can make whatever you want.
Okay, so how long will it be before fans are like more impatient? Okay, we dealt with this section of Star Wars. We dealt with these years. What happens after? What does Star Wars look like? What is their empire? Is there, you know, some type of, what is the crisis or whatever? What does Star Wars look like after, you know, Rise and everything, you know? And
they're already working on that.
Yeah, they're working on that right now. What will fans accept? Because what they're giving us right now is so much stuff inside of a timeline, you know, that is it creativity coming from everything that was predating not predating, but you know, from like the Lucas stuff and everything, where as soon as you get past like Rise of Skywalker, you're just creating like a whole new world and stuff doesn't make sense, or you know, stuff may be great, or who do you trust in the, you know, whose hands do you trust into that, you know?
So are you saying like what point in the timeline or what story would the Star Wars fandom like to see in the theaters, like on the big screen? Because let's face it, that's where Star Wars lives, on the big screen. So we've pretty much accepted this now. We're going to be watching this on anything from a 17-inch to a 85-inch screen now. Like, and we don't have to go anywhere. Star Wars is no longer in public. Mm-hmm. I mean, in a movie theater.
Right.
So where does that start? Because to me, if I saw a commercial during the Super Bowl, whatever, that there was going to be a Star Wars movie, where does that fall? What content does that movie involve?
I want to see the continuing adventures of Poe and Finn.
Poe and Finn. Okay.
I want you to team them up. I want to see them go.
Right.
Yeah, but then that draws the line, right? Because now we know that Finn is Force sensitive. So does he become Jedi trained in this new society, right? Does he just, because we already
he's a young man. Maybe he wants to. Maybe he wants to see the galaxy.
We already have our Harrison Ford type, you know, character in the new Poe Dameron.
What is the threat? I mean, we are they repeating the same beats? Is there an empire? Is
it the new order, or is it the empire?
I think DP, you're on to something, because like I think what we learned from the sequel trilogy is you can't repeat the same, right? We had Starkiller Base, which was another Death Star. We had like the New Order, whatever it was, the First Order, the Final Order. Like they have to be ultra creative if they're going to move forward and come up with some kind of whole new threat. Whether it be now that they know what the unknown regions are, maybe there's a secret war between, we're doing the Marvel Secret Wars. I mean,
Right.
with the Kree, maybe we introduce there's a Kree war or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
They have to get ultra creative
Yes.
because we've already seen the main galaxy. We need to get to these regions we've never seen, and I think that's what opens up
repeat
Star
the same
Wars.
beats and everything
Yeah,
that we're familiar with just because it's
can't.
Star Wars. You
Right.
know,
So you don't want to see an Anakin Skywalker clone.
We don't need that. We tried that. They tried that in the sequel
They did it,
trilogy in
yeah.
the film.
Yeah,
It
Well,
didn't work.
I mean, but why do? I mean, you might as well reboot the whole thing if you're going to do that.
Yeah.
You know, but why go back to that? Now we can have like not legacy characters, but descendants. You can start reintroducing descendants of and I'm sure that was introduced in the EU and stuff that you could bring back, and start and make them new. We could have start having descendants of or legacy characters. I mean, I'll be down for that. But it doesn't have to repeat the same beast that we already seen in like the 4, 5, and 6 and like the prequel. I mean the sequel trilogy and everything.
What about a feature film that told the story of Leia as in between Obi-Wan or Kenobi ended and like whatever happened after that? Like her maturity.
You know what's an interesting point about what you just said? I don't know if you guys, I mean, you might know, but so they just released a panel for Star Wars Celebrations in Europe, and that female voice actor who is actually the female actress who played Leia, young Leia, is like one of the main features of Celebration. So I think that she has a lot bigger part to play in the Star Wars, and she might even continue her role maybe into a Leia series. Now that I see that she's forefront on the panel, and if usually on a panel you're somebody pretty important.
Yeah, and you might be there for a while. So like a Rogue One type of thing, but not with everyone dying at the end, but like that vibe though, right? Because Rogue One, I mean, admit it, I'll watch that movie all day long. That's a great film. That's a great Star Wars film. So I'd like to see that. But Leia's story, like how did she go from this little precocious girl, right, into a rebellion leader? I mean,
you're going back into. Are you wanting that in a movie type format?
Movie, like,
because again, you're going back into like the timeline and everything.
Yeah, I don't think you can do a movie. That has to be a series.
I
don't know. I think they could do it as a movie
because they can lead that right up to literally that tunnel scene in episode 6 or episode 4, right? So at the end of Rogue One, literally right until we see Vader and then her sending the distress signal to Obi-Wan, they literally can tie the whole arc together in a series and end us right where she starts off in the Death Star.
I think there's a lot of places for them to go in that, that in between 3 and 4. I think after the sequel trilogy, it's hard. I almost want to see something before you show me what happens to Rey and Finn and Poe and those characters, and Chewie, since Chewie's alive for some reason,
and Jar Jar.
And Jar Jar has not been confirmed dead. We do not have eyeballs on his dead.
We don't have eyeballs body. On his eyeballs and his
on his battered, broken, destroyed, chopped, burnt body.
They didn't show a body. They didn't show a body.
A boy can dream. A boy can dream. I almost feel like you need to show me something like if you showed me the end of the Civil War, right? And then you showed me a glimpse of World War II, all right? I would want to see what the events of that sequel trilogy, right? The ending of the Sith conflict, the destruction of Palpatine, and the rebooting of the Jedi Order under whatever Rey is going to create. I would want to see that order in its next crisis, right? Just to see what it is that they're trying to do, or see like some of the outcome, and that could maybe re-energize the stakes of the stories that they have after that. The movie.
So what you're essentially saying there, and you're hitting on something, and I would actually like to see, because it doesn't have to be done in a movie type format, but it could be a build up to like a movie, sort of like the political, because Star Wars really came political for me. Especially with everything that Lucas introduced in the prequel stuff. So you can't just have like a galaxy of like adventures. well, you can, but everything, because there's so many type of stories you could tell. But the overall stuff, okay, the war has ended. So how does society and everything deal with like the afterwards and everything? How does government structures get built again, rebuilt, and then there's another pending war coming. You could see that in like a series, and then the actual war. Star Wars again. And this is the World War II or so. What you were trying to allude to here.
The bigger conflict, right? The conflict that sets up why things are like they are. Like, for instance, let's just something that could be weird. Like the Jedi show up and they're like either hyper militaristic, right? Like they have a bunch of futuristic gadgets that make them completely, totally deadly. Or maybe they have nothing to do with lightsabers or anything. And they have completely said, no, we don't do that anymore. And that would inform you a lot about the choices that Rey makes. And it would also give you, let's say she starts moving in the opposite direction towards or against violence, depending on what you depicted later. It could make that interesting too, because what are they getting wrong about the teacher that is like has to be their most revered teacher if the Jedi Order is extant and successful in a century or two after Rey reestablishes it. So it sets up basically the large outlines of what the historical narrative of what happens is. But as we discussed earlier, histories tend to be written by certain people. There's the old axiom that history is written by the victors, but it's also written by the people that can afford to have someone write a history about them and pay them to do it. That's not everybody. Yeah. And so there's a constant tension between the truth of history as we understand it and the truth of history as it's understood as it's happening, right? I've been thinking about this a lot for some reason, and I think it's maybe because we're coming up on the year anniversary of the war in Ukraine. And I have this weird feeling that if you look at what's going on historically now on the planet, that's going to be the thing that's going to be dominant if we're looking at it in 10 years, right? Like, wow, that's the era was defined by that. And there's so much other crap going on that it's hard for me to even hold that in my mind right now.
Moment and everything, so it's almost like a norm. You're so in the moment and everything, but history is going to write, okay, this was the defining point.
Yeah.
Kind of like how the Cold War was back in the 80s and stuff. I'm like, okay, wow, that was a big thing back then. But in the moment, I remember just going outside, watching Transformers and, coming home from school and all that and everything. It was crazy back then. So, what my parents had to deal with.
Yeah.
So it sounds like we're good with like the way the post prequel ended. Okay. Are we good with how that ended? And
it ended. So,
yeah. It's one of those, it is what it is. I mean, the only thing that I got from, not really inside information, but the only thing that's leaning out there is Rey's name. That's still the hidden part as far as her being Rey Palpatine.
I don't like that part.
They're still toying with her name, whether her mother's maiden name. So they're still toying with that, actually, what they're going to do. The name that leaked out there potentially is Rey Solana, which is a descendant of a Kenobi as well. So
that I like.
There's a lot out there. I mean, there's a lot of things they're writing. I mean,
I really wish they would have. I think they just need to pick a lane with that and stick with it, man. Like I was fine with her parentage being a big deal for her and then not really important. I was fine with it being that being sort of a lie, whatever. But look, I'm snip, snap. Like I just pick one, leave it there. If she's important and she's Sheev's granddaughter, I mean, again, if we're looking at the history of the galaxy, we're going to be talking about the time before Sheev Palpatine, successfully gathered the reins of the governance of the entire galaxy into one hand for the only time it ever happened. And after that, it's going to be a big deal thing. We talk about Zero CE being, traditionally the birth of Jesus Christ, but it's also basically when Augustus was put in charge of Rome. It's basically the same exact time. So this would be, for, again, those descendants 100 years after the Battle of Yavin or 200 years after the Battle of Yavin, that's a historical signpost for them that's going to define the era. It's going to be, they'll probably call themselves like 100 years after the restoration of the Jedi Order, or like 200 years after Like they would think about it in those terms. Just the same way we probably think, like visually, we probably envision ourselves as X amount of years from things like the Berlin Wall falling for some of us, and 9/11, and now the pandemic, right? We're thinking about our lives in those sorts of terms of eras too.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Sorry,
No,
guys.
but
I think about weird thoughts all the time.
No, I definitely do that. I definitely do that as well.
History
And
expert.
I always divulge in these rabbit holes of Star Wars. I mean, and then they've opened the ultimate one. I mean, we've already discussed Ahsoka and they introducing the world between worlds, maybe doing some time jumping as they do in Marvel and whatnot. So that really opens up not even retconning, but now changing the events of the past and future, right? Because now we don't have to, as DP said, we don't have to retcon it. Because if she goes in the world between worlds or something happens, the events of the future automatically change. So then there is no longer Rey Palpatine. She can be something else. So this Ahsoka series, I think, is really going to be vital to the future of what the Filoni Star Wars will look like and Star Wars moving forward. I think everything. I mean, when we talked about the Mandalorian being important, I think this Ahsoka series and the way they pull this off will be all eggs in the basket to what the future of Star Wars will be, what future movies will look like, because literally this is going to be the reset for everything. This is really that reset that we're going to get, because if she does go into one of those tunnels, that alters history forever. It alters all. We talk about Luke. We talk about what happened. I mean, literally, it changes everything that we know. And also that lets people like us and some of those super fans who know it all and seem to think that their opinion matters more than anybody else and we have to do it one way. Well, it now debunks everything you say, because now everything's a reset, right? So we can't complain about what we know, because literally it's a reset. And that gives us power.
What if all she does is go? I mean, this would change literally nothing about what happens in the next 20 years. But all she does is say to Luke in Ben's bedroom, like, "Yo, quit it," and he just turns around instead of lighting the lightsaber, and that's all that changes. And they flash back to after episode 6. And you'd be like, "Oh crap! I guess that's a completely different situation now," and you get to see it again. It'd be cool.
Correct. So I mean, that's and that, like I said, it makes it cool. It changes everything. We don't have to complain then, because there's your reset, right? You can now depict whatever you want. The events change itself and it rewrites itself. So, I mean, this Bad Batch discussion really led us down into a pleasant rabbit hole as to
always does
why we love Star Wars. Because as we said, one episode like this leads us into 8,000 other theories, right? I mean, just because the expansiveness of literally 25 minutes of content, right? Leads us into all these other thoughts, which is crazy.
Because it just doesn't suck. It's
true.
Good stuff. I mean, there's good writing. We were engaged, and maybe it wasn't the best episode. Maybe it's not going to be the best episode of all 16. Is that how many we got here?
16.
Whatever. Well, but we'll still, if 3 weeks from now you said, "Hey, well, how about that Entombed episode?" Hey, I would recognize I could tell you what happened, verbatim. So everything that they're doing right now has legitimate, presence. I mean, I dig it. I mean, I'm having a great time I don't consider, well, maybe I'm a super fan. I'm a super geek as far as Star Wars is concerned, but I don't know everything. But as far as loving Star Wars, this fits my, it fits in with what I accept as Star Wars.
It's good. I look forward to it every week. I mean,
yep. And it's the right amount of content for us to easily consume and discuss. 22 minutes is I can do that without any friction from my 18-month-old and her brand new eye teeth. Yeah.
Fun times, teeth, the cutting of the gums. The greatest time to be a parent. But it's
okay. We're doing a lot of ice in the bottles of milk, so that's been helpful so far.
It's a trip.
But yeah, guys, another fun episode. Another way to wrap up the week here, leading into next week, and that'll be, I guess, our Act 1 finale. of Bad Batch. So what we'll do, and I know these episodes are shorter, so sometimes you guys maybe think we're rambling, but no, there's just so much discussion. So what we can do next week is we'll go over the episode 6. And then basically we can do, I guess, we'll do an Act 1 kind of review of those first 6, so we can discuss how the batch, because I'm pretty sure they'll tie it in like that as well, with it being such a long series. So we can probably break it down in Act 1, 2, 3, like we did with the other series, is when we were watching bunches of the episodes. So stay peeled for that as well, guys. And until next week, this is the way.
This is the way.